My guest today is talking to me from the Galilee in Israel. I am still amazed at the technology we have at our disposal to have this conversation from the comfort of my home with someone 6,500 miles away in Israel. But here we are. I met Boaz Shalgi in September 2017 when we visited Israel with a group from our church led by Andy Cook with Experience Israel. Boaz was our Jewish guide when we arrived in Israel, and I've stayed in touch with him through social media for the last 7 years. As we all know, Israel has been the center of the news since October the 7th, 2023, when they were suddenly attacked by Hamas, an Islamic terrorist group in neighboring Gaza. As you would expect, Israel retaliated, and now the Israel-Gaza conflict has been going on for some 8 months. Lots of lives have been lost on both sides, and this conflict is far from over, and it changes almost daily. We all know it could elevate to a much larger war. Although we know Israel is a very important ally of the United States, since this war began, there have been tensions developing between the Biden administration and Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister. We also know there have been large anti-Israel rallies at some of our major universities here in America that totally disrupted the university's reason for existence, protesting with chants such as, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." For many, Israel is the culprit. I firmly believe most Americans stand with Israel. There seems to be more and more anti-Israel sentiment, and the media seems to be feeding the anti-Semitism to the masses. Is there someone behind that? We know Israel is the land of the Bible. How important is that to this story? I think you will quickly see my guest today as a smart, humble, and reasonable Jewish man who is living right in the middle of all the conflict. His life and country have been completely disrupted, and their future is uncertain. Before you turn your back on Israel, I think it would be wise to take a few minutes to listen to his political and biblical perspective. You're about to meet my friend, Boaz Shalgi. But before I begin this conversation, I'm going to begin reading in Genesis chapter 17, verse 3. Abram fell face down, and God said to him, "As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you, and your descendants after you for the generations to come, to be your God, and the God of your descendants after you. The whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God."
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.
This is Bruce Goddard, and you're listening to the View from a Hearse podcast. I have a special guest, as I have mentioned. Boaz Shalgi is with me, and he is in Galilee in Israel talking to me. So that's incredible technology. To begin with, I met Boaz when my wife and I went with a group of with our church to Israel back about 7 years ago now. Never forgot him. I've stayed in touch with him through social media, followed him. So Boaz, number one, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me on this podcast this morning.
Bruce, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I think it's very important nowadays that people will receive the accurate information from what is happening here and not necessarily what the media is feeding you with. So I'm glad to have this opportunity.
Well, before we get into it, I know you just took a group to Greece, and I just happened to, my brother-in-law, Rudy, sent me a text. Rudy was on that trip with us to Israel, and they were looking at your Facebook page with the group, and I've got triplet nieces, great nieces, my sister's grandchildren that were on that trip with you, the Newton triplets. I guess you remember them. I bet you do from your trip last week to Greece, right?
Yes, you're right. It's not every trip that, I have triplets. So that was awesome. And I remember that, we were sitting around the table in one of the restaurants and the three of them were there and they said, Buzz, look at us. I mean, do we look alike? Do we not? And then they started making fun of themselves. Who is more bossy? Who is this? Who is that? So that was awesome, and I definitely remember them.
Yeah, well, what a small world. I could not believe that. And I knew they were in Greece, and I knew you were in Greece because I saw it on Facebook, but I had no idea you were with the same group and you were leading them. That's incredible, absolutely incredible. So,
yes, the thing is that since nobody comes to Israel now, and we want to keep our business somehow alive, we started also, promoting Greece, the journeys of Paul and other things. So at least a little bit out of this big financial damage that's hitting us.
Yeah, so that's one thing I want people to understand, that so many of you, and you're certainly one of them, you've had a great business and have done a lot of good as a tour guide, leading people, especially people in the United States, to come to tours of Israel. You and Andy Cook, my friend Andy, brought us there, and then you were the Israeli guide. It was over the top, and all of us were so impressed. So why don't you talk a minute about what's going on in Israel now? You just said that your business is basically where you can't do business because obviously nobody's coming into Israel to go on Holy Land tours. So talk about what's happening there right now.
Okay, Bruce. What happens is that we were the tour operation that hosted the last American group in Israel that came here exactly when the war started. That was 8.5 months ago. And since then, absolutely zero, nothing. So the situation is that there's an ongoing war in Gaza, and there's an ongoing war in Lebanon that the media doesn't really say much about, but that is 5-6 miles from where we live. And every day we have to go a few times to the safe room, to the bomb shelter because of the sirens, because of explosions all over the place above our heads. Soon everybody predicts that this too is going to turn to a all-out war. So we are in a very sensitive situation right now.
You're at home now as you talk to me, is that right?
I'm at home, but most probably that in a few days we'll have to evacuate from here to a safer place in the center of Israel because life is becoming absolutely impossible here in Galilee. It's not safe anymore to even go to the supermarket, let alone going to the banks or other things. So we're kind of, being in prison in our own community and that stuff.
Yeah. Well, so not only are you living in a prison, but the financial engine of Israel has almost come to a halt. I mean, I know Israel depended a lot on tourism and people coming in, and that's all come to a halt, right?
Yes, tourism is usually one of the 4 or 5 main industries of Israel. It includes so much tour operators, bus companies, tour guides, restaurants, hotels, you name it. So many circles that are now hurt so much because of what's happening. And the truth is that even the government that was supposed to compensate people doesn't have enough money for that. Right. So right now I'm talking to you, and this is already 8 months with not only zero income, but also zero compensation from the government. And, I'm not complaining because the government too, they spend billions of on ammunition and weapons because we need to first of all survive
Right.
and then look after the people. So, yeah. And, I have three children. They're grown ups, but they're still my children. And I have a house and a mortgage and commitments. So,
Right.
you barely sleep at night. You're worried all the time about what's going to happen the next day and how you're going to survive another day.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's not healthy. It's not good.
I know that you have had a lot of people here that know you, that have been over there with you, and I want to be sure that we provide a way that we can financially help you, Boaz, and your family. So let's go back if we can. And folks, I'm talking to Boaz Shalgi, and he is in Galilee in Israel talking to me right now. And I want him to give us just a little bit of brief layman's terms about this whole conflict between Israel and Palestine. Just give that from your perspective, Boaz. What is the conflict? A lot of people here see what they see and read in the papers or see on TV, but from your perspective, what is the conflict?
Okay, so, this is a question, Bruce, that I could easily spend, a week seminar
Yeah,
explaining to people exactly what it is, how it started. But the long story short, because our time is limited as well, is as follows. In 1947, the United Nations decided to divide the land here of Israel, back then known as Palestine, between the Jews and the Arabs. The Jews embraced it, said, "Amen, we'll take it." The Arabs rejected it and said, no, the whole entire land is ours. And right away, they started a war against us known as the War of Independence. We won the war. And then they started more wars against Israel, 67 and 73 and 82. And all these years, no matter how generous the Israeli government was towards the Palestinians, saying, let's talk, let's negotiate, let's achieve peace, it was never enough. And the reason it's never enough is because the Muslims, see the land here as part of the entire Middle East that should be Jew-free and be pure Muslim. That is why nothing ever worked. As for what is happening right now, we had kind of a status quo with the Palestinians in Gaza. Israel does not have any presence in Gaza. There's no Jews living in Gaza. There's no Israeli military in Gaza. So we thought even if we don't have peace with them, it's quiet, it's okay. As you know, you came to Israel, millions of people came here, it was safe, it was good. But what we did not anticipate is that all these years, they were planning to attack Israel, the big attack. And that came on October 7th of last year when 3,000 Palestinians stormed into Israel and simply butchered everyone that was in their way. Soldiers, civilians, Jews, non-Jews, everyone in their way. In one day, they butchered 1,400 Israelis, most of them civilians. And only a few days later, we were exposed to the atrocities of women being raped and people being beheaded and people being burnt alive in their homes. And on top of all that, they also took 250 people that they kidnapped into Gaza. Most of them are already dead. There's maybe 20, 30, 40 that are still alive. We don't know the exact number. And right now there's a big war, A, to try and bring the hostages back into Israel, and B, to try and destroy Hamas, this terror organization, for doing what they did to us, to the Jewish people. That's in a nutshell.
I get it. And so the problem is Hamas, who is a terrorist group, is leading that, right?
Yes, Hamas is there. They're controlling Gaza.
Right.
They're terrorizing their own people. They're very, very fanatic, just like the Iranian, fanatic regime in Iran. Everything is according to the Sharia law, and they will not accept anyone who is not a fanatic Muslim just like them. And that is something that, a democracy cannot accept. A democracy cannot tolerate that or live near people who behave this way. And that is why, in a way, this was inevitable. And, we're talking about politics, but we're also talking about the Bible. And all of this is in the Bible. I mean, these are prophecies from thousands of years ago. The big war between Isaac and Ishmael, the two sons of Abraham, the rejected one versus his beloved one. And we see it clearly, what is happening now, because it's not only the Palestinians. Bruce noticed what is happening in the world. When people talk to me, I say to them, worse than what happened to us in October is the reaction of the world, because now we can see the anti-Semitism rising all over the world.
Yeah.
And this is worse than anything. Israel is being boycotted. Israel is receiving punishments. We're being brought to the International Court in the Netherlands. We're being treated like criminals. And unfortunately, even Biden, the president of our biggest friend, the United States, is not acting as a friend.
Right. So, and I want to talk about that. So, obviously, when Israel was attacked, and you had no idea that was about to happen on October 7th, Israel retaliated, which you should, but you didn't immediately retaliate. How did that come about? Was Israel trying to give the time for innocent civilians to get out of the way and saying they were coming in, or did you just go in, or how did that come about, Boaz?
Yes, Bruce. What happened is, first of all, before we even started the war, we said to them, get us our hostages back, and we will not attack. And they said no. In exchange for them, we want all 8,000 prisoners, including murderers in Israel, to be released. And that's when Israel said, no, that's not going to happen. And when the war started, yes, we gave them enough time to evacuate. We threw flyers by airplanes, by the millions, calling people evacuate. We threw maps to them, telling them where to go, where not to go. We did everything that no military in the world does in order to not hurt civilians. Now, obviously, this is a war, and obviously, civilians get hurt. But the ratio between how many terrorists were killed to how many civilians, and this is not me saying, this is all the experts around the world saying, the ratio is better than any battle fought in human history. Meaning that when America went and bombed Afghanistan, or the British bombed whatever, they killed many more civilians than we did, proportionally to how many terrorists as well. But again, when I said that anti-Semitism started rising, people don't see that. People don't care about that. People don't even know about the atrocities of September 11th. Of October the 7th. People think that one day Israel just decided to go bomb Gaza and kill people. That's the way CNN paints us. That's how Al Jazeera paints us.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to have you talk on. And the truth is, Hamas, that's part of their strategy, is to attack you and use their civilian women and babies and everybody else to hide behind, because they know that they're going to get killed and they can hide behind them, and they're part of the world will turn against you. That's part of their strategy to begin with. Don't you believe it?
Exactly. That's what they call human shields. They use the babies and the civilians as human shields to protect themselves. My son was just released from the army 2 weeks ago. He was in the special forces. I don't even want to describe what he went through and the things that he did and saw. But he said that in every house we found weapons in amounts that you cannot imagine. He said in beds of babies we found hand grenades. Every house has a tunnel where you go down and you find more mortars and weapons. Every single house in Gaza is ready for war. Yeah.
There's a lot of Christian people here that 100% are back in Israel. I can promise you that. And I know you know that. I know you know it.
I know that.
But when you see the news and you see these Ivy League schools shut down because all these kids protesting the atrocities of Israel, by they're killing innocent babies and children and all that, what do you say to them?
I say a few things. First of all, if you really want to know what's happening here, come to Israel. I'll take you on a tour to the Gaza settlement, and you'll see the remains. You will see the burned homes. You'll see the burned kibbutzes. You will see things that you will not believe. Listen to testimonials of people, of women that came back from Gaza after they were sexually abused, after they saw things that, again, you cannot imagine people can actually do to one another. This is what people need to do. Go to the legitimate websites, the Israeli websites, to learn about October the 7th. And because, see, what happens with the media all over the world is that Qatar is sponsoring that. And when Qatar sponsors that, they also sponsor the universities, many of the universities in America. And because this is the deal, everything turns pro-Qatar, pro-Arab, pro-Muslim, and hating Israel. So when things like that happen now, people don't even believe Israel. People will not believe what I say. That is a big, big problem. But you need to listen to me, to people like me, to the Bible. Listen to the Bible, what God says in the Bible about what's going to happen to the Jews, about end-time war, which I'm so sure that we're getting so close to that. All the symbols are now showing us that this is it. And when I say to Americans, hey, don't look at me. Look at September 11. Look at what the Muslims did on American soil to thousands of Americans that never had any conflict with Islam. So this is not just us. Gaza is now a symptom of something much larger, and that is the big war between Islam and the Western world, if you're asking me, Bruce.
Right. Well, unbelievable. Folks, again, I'm talking to Boaz Shalgi. I'm going to take a break, and we're going to be right back. Boaz, I think I'm seeing where there's a lot of humanitarian efforts are going on now in Gaza as well. They have shortage of food, water, medical care, and all that. Talk about that. Is that the case?
Yes. What we're doing is we said yes to the American administration, to Biden, and we said, you let us fight, and we'll do whatever you want with, humanitarian assistance and everything. So every day there are hundreds of trucks getting into the Gaza. There's thousands of tons of food, being dropped from the air by the United States, by Jordan, by Turkey, other countries. So I actually read in the paper yesterday that it says starvation, not really, because for a few months now, the average calories per person that being brought into Gaza is 3,400 per person. That will make you fat.
Right.
So there's no any starvation there, yeah.
Right. So that's going on. It's not like Israel's trying to stop humanitarian efforts going on in Gaza.
No, what you see on television is Israelis, not many in numbers, mainly families of hostages that are held in Gaza, trying to stop some of these trucks from getting into the Gaza for obvious reasons. But, this is more for the TV. Obviously, they don't succeed doing that, and everything gets into Gaza. Let me tell you, Bruce, if we went on a strategy of starving them from the beginning, this war would have lasted 2 weeks.
Right.
2 weeks. They would have all gotten out of their tunnels, giving up, and saying, hey, we have no food, we have no water, we're not going to survive. The fact that 8 months later, they're all still in good shape, that says everything.
Right. Wow. I want to talk about two things because I want to get your perspective on this, politically and biblically. Let's talk about politically first. Why is Israel important to the United States? Why is Israel's sovereignty important to the United States?
Because the big game is not Israel. The big game is United States on one side, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran on the other side. And the game here is who is going to get hold of more key places in the world. The United States knows that Israel is not only a very strong nation and a very strong military, but Israel is also the only democracy in the entire Middle East. And that is something that the Americans cherish and understand and want to have their allies everywhere, but especially if their allies are democracies, which means you can be an ally of Iran, but then the next day their president, is being changed into a different president, and he gets crazy and says, I don't want America anymore. Well, when you deal with democracies, that's not the case. And that is why for America, it is solid. When they know Israel is our friend, that is solid, that's not going to change. And if a day comes where we need our military to operate in the Middle East, we have a big, good, solid friend over there.
Israel is small geographically. I mean, it's probably smaller than Massachusetts. Every kid, boy and girl, has to join the military, right? I remember you saying that, right?
Yeah. From the age of 18, right after high school, mandatory. Boys do 3 years service, girls do 2 years. It's mandatory. But you know what? Even if it wasn't mandatory, people would have still done that because we have no option. We cannot afford losing any war. It's also a pride. My dad fought in 2 wars. I served in the special forces. Obviously, my son want to do the same, Otherwise, he'll feel ashamed not to do that.
Sure. So, biblically, why there's a lot of Christian people here. That's the land of the Bible. Jesus was Jewish. So talk about biblically the importance of what's going on in Israel.
Yeah, as you're saying, Jesus was Jewish. His disciples were Jewish. This is the land that God has blessed from day one when Abraham first came into here. And remember in Genesis what God said to Abraham. He said, I will bless those who bless you and I will curse those who curse you. And since most of Americans are Christians that follow the Bible and love the Bible and read the Bible, not only the New Testament, but also the Hebrew Bible. When people read about all the prophecies, all the blessings that are in the Bible to the Jewish people and how Christians and others will be blessed through the Jewish people, then obviously they want to be on the side that's blessed and not on the side that's cursed. And that is why evangelical Christians mainly, but not only, support Israel, want to be part of the connection between them and God through the people of Israel. And that's the biblical aspect of it.
I remember memorizing years ago, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And that's not only the Jerusalem, the physical city that we visited and that you're very familiar with, but also the spiritual city of Jerusalem. And that's what Israel represents, right?
Yes. Jerusalem is the holy city. And when people say, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, that is for Jerusalem. But on the broader scale, that's for all of Israel and all the Jewish people and all the believers, to be honest, not just the Jewish people, because Jerusalem is sacred to the Christians as well, not only for the Jewish people.
For sure, absolutely. So go back and let's talk about, I've been reading that there's a possibility that Netanyahu would be voted out there. Talk about your support for him, or what's going on with Netanyahu, your prime minister.
Netanyahu, was not doing very great until the war started. And also, he has a big responsibility for not anticipating this coming. But I must say, in his favor, that since it started, he's really acting like a good leader. And I can tell you one thing, Bruce, he is the only one that when I look to the left and when I look to the right, he's the only one that is able today in the Israeli politics to stand still like a rock and say, I'm going to do what's good for us, for Israel, and not what people are telling me to do. Because the pressure that Biden is putting on him is something that you cannot even understand. And I know for a fact that no other candidate in Israel would have been able to stand against that pressure. In other words, if we had someone else in office now and not Netanyahu, the war would have ended long ago, with us being humiliated, with us not finishing the job, with us still having Hamas in power, and we don't even want to think about it. So today I say, bless God for Netanyahu being in power.
What pressures Biden put on him? What's behind that?
Okay, so it started on October the 8th, the day after Hamas did what they did, when you probably remember the famous word of Biden when he said, if anyone was thinking about attacking Israel, I say don't. But once he said don't, we were attacked constantly. Already 8,000 rockets were launched into Israel by Hezbollah, because Hezbollah doesn't care about Biden, and Biden didn't do to them anything after he said don't. And more so, he said don't to the Iranians. And what was their response? 350 rockets, long-range rockets, that they launched into Israel, saying to Biden, don't threaten us, you're not going to do anything. And he didn't. But to us, he keeps saying all the time, you got to end the war. You got to meet with the expectations of Hamas. You got to do all this because I have elections at home that I need to win. That's what he cares about, his elections. We are now in a situation of survival. In many ways, we're fighting our second war of independence. And Biden is saying, I have elections at home that I have to win. So you don't do this and you don't do that. And when you do this, you take into consideration this and that. And he's tying our hands behind our back. He doesn't let us fight.
In reality, Biden's an old man, and I know you know it. Somebody else is making those decisions. What is your perspective on a Trump-led United States? Would that be better for Israel, or would that make you nervous?
Oh, no. That's for sure going to be better for Israel. Again, I don't want to get into domestic American politics, if Trump or Biden, who is better for America, but there's no doubt that for Israel, Trump is going to be a lot better. Trump will let Israel fight the war and win the war, and not put this, pressure on us to stop just because, he's got a campaign going on. So if you're asking Israelis, if Trump and Biden would have been, running for elections in Israel, Trump would have won by landslide.
That's interesting. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So what is the end game here? Will this conflict, has it slowed down? What's going on with the conflict right now?
No, it hasn't slowed down. I would say the other way around. It's hitting us very quickly in Lebanon, the northern border that we have. And if that turns into a all-out war, which I'm pretty sure it will, then the Gaza war is going to look like a joke comparing to that, because Hezbollah terror organization in Lebanon is a lot more powerful than Hamas. So that will require an invasion into Lebanon with about 200,000 Israeli soldiers and a lot of, Air Force up in the air. It's going to be tough. And they already contacted my son yesterday. And even though he was just released from the army, they told him that he's on a standby, for the Lebanon frontier. So my friend Bruce, we're far away from seeing the end of this.
Wow. Man, I just feel for you. I feel for us. I feel for the world. And I think, as you said, there's something behind all this. It's bigger than just Hamas and Israel. There's a lot bigger picture here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So people can understand. I remember when the United States was attacked, September 11th, 2001, we were ready to retaliate. What do people think Israel should have done when Hamas attacked them on October the 7th? Well, what other options did you have?
Well, we had no other option. It was consensus in Israel that Israel needs to go on a big attack, because it's not only against Hamas. Keep in mind, Bruce, that everything that's happening here, the whole neighborhood is watching. The whole neighborhood, which means Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, they're all watching. And if Israel had displayed weakness, that would have been a message to all the others, hey, go ahead, attack Israel, because Israel is impotent. Israel cannot even defend itself. So go ahead, this is your opportunity. So the attack was also a very clear message. Don't you dare, because we will know how to defend ourselves no matter what.
What scares me is people here get so influenced by what they see. I have to have conversations with people. I feel that, Israel has killed all the innocent kids and babies and people, and it's not right. And the truth is, according to what you're saying, Israel did everything they could to protect the civilians. They went overboard to protect the civilians. Hamas was part of that strategy to hide behind them and use them as human shields.
I'll tell you more than that, Bruce. Something that makes many Israelis very upset is that because we are so determined to protect civilians in Gaza, we are risking our own soldiers, and many of them got killed because of that. And I'll give you an example. We know that there is a building, okay, say 10-story building with potential terrorists inside of this building. But there's maybe also a possibility that civilians are there as well. So instead of bombing the whole building from the air and saying, hey, there are terrorists there, they can all die, we don't care, we don't do that. We send our soldiers into the building to pinpoint the terrorists. And sometimes that's how they get engaged, in battle inside their homes and get injured or killed because the Air Force didn't blow it out from up above because we're so cautious about possible civilians being inside that building. Nobody does that.
And you got this Arab war machine, or Arab machine, that owns the propaganda that's coming out in these colleges that Israel is all about being inhumane. That's what's happening, right?
Listen, what's happening in universities, it is beyond pathetic. Because when people march and scream from the river to the sea, Palestine should be free, first of all, they don't understand that by saying that, they're saying that Israel should be annihilated, because if Palestine is from the river to the sea, then there's no Israel in between. But another thing is that when reporters ask them, okay, which river are we talking about? They're like, we don't know.
Right.
And which sea are we talking about? We don't know either. So just to go and scream and shout things that you don't even know what they mean, that's the definition of brainwashing. Yeah, there's no any army in the world with higher standards and moral than the Israeli army. If after 8 months of brutal fightings in Gaza, you're talking about 35,000 that were killed and not 2 million that were killed, that says everything. Because the ability of the Israeli army is that Gaza can be wiped out in one day. We didn't do that because we don't want to do that, because we're trying to target the terrorists. But when Gaza is so dense and the terrorists live together with civilians in their homes, it's inevitable.
And you today are really in danger. You think you're about to have to move inside. You're kind of close to the action there. I remember on the tour we went very close to your house, and I remember you pointed out where we were, and we were close. We were close to the Gaza Strip then, right?
Yeah, we were close to the Gaza. We were close to the Golan Heights, and I can tell everyone that's listening to me now that the sad news is that my dad's house was burned yesterday. So he doesn't have a house. And, eventually the government will take care of that. Who knows when? My dad's house was burnt yesterday because of the missiles falling over here. And like I said, life became impossible. So, yeah, Bruce, you're right. Next week, we're going to be refugees in our own country.
I know there are people here that would like to help you personally. If you're so inclined, we have determined the best way to handle this would be through the United States Travel Organization, of which he is a part. You can mail your checks to EDI Travel US Inc., 650 Highway 27, STE 5, number 310, Somerset, Somerset, Kentucky, 42501. Please designate on the check that the donation is for Boaz Shalgi, Shalgi. This address is also provided on the show notes that can be found on your podcast app. Boaz, I want to ask you just I want to end this and talk about more of a biblical perspective. What do you want people Bible believers in the United States, what is your message to them right now from your heart?
My message is please just follow the Bible and God's words. Be on Israel's side. As I said, God was very clear when he said, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Be on the blessed side. Be together with the Jewish people. Remember that Jesus was Jewish. Peter was Jewish. We are the same people. We came from the same trunk. You're an offshoot of the trunk of Judaism. We serve the same God. And just do the right thing. Be on the right side of history and be judged by God while you're on the right side doing the right things and not saying, hey, I did not know because I listened to Al Jazeera instead of Boaz.
And again, be careful what you're listening to or watching, and compare it to what you're hearing here today when you listen or watch, right?
Yeah. You have to be very careful with selecting, the sources of media and Facebook and all that. Just make sure that it's a legitimate site and you really get to see, the truth of what's happening here. And also use your logic. I always say to people, Israel is a prosperous democracy. You've been here, Bruce. It's a beautiful country. I mean, the technology here is second to none. People are happy. People work. Economy is great. Why in the world would we want to start a war with one of our neighbors for no reason? I mean, how does that even make sense to anyone?
Right.
It doesn't. And you know what? If it doesn't make sense to you, it's probably not true.
Yeah, really, for sure. Wow.
Yeah.
Boaz, you're a good man. God bless you.
Thank you so much.
God bless you. Also, people can follow you on Facebook, and it's Boaz Shalgi, Shalgi, when he can, and you could just heard him. It's not easy for him to leave his family and go to Greece, but he just got back from a group. He's trying to make a living for people that want to. There's going to be more tours that he's trying to do in Greece. He certainly can't do it right now in Israel. Hopefully that's going to open up at some point where people can go back to the land of the Bible. Boaz, thank you, my friend. God bless you, and you are in my prayers and my wife Kathy's prayers and all the people that love you and know you prayers. I can promise you that.
Well, Bruce, thank you so much. God bless you. God bless America, and we'll wait for better days.
Yes. Thank you, my friend. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May those who love you be secure. May there be peace within your walls and security within your citadels. For the sake of my family and friends, I will say, peace be within you. For the sake of the Lord our God, I will seek your prosperity. Psalms 122, 6 through 9.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.